Amazing treasure is all around us, from ocean depths to desert sands. But finding it is a challenge that can drive the search to the four corners of the earth. Hi, I'm Eric Close. Could one man, armed with only a theory, actually find enormous emeralds right in his own backyard? Will these deep-sea divers locate a valuable cache of 100-year-old brandy missing since World War I? A worthless painting found in a church attic? Or could it be the lost work of a Renaissance master? And can an old deck chair, which turned up in an antique shop, be from the world's most famous sunken ship? Let's find out as we search for hidden riches on The Hunt for Amazing Treasures.
The Hunt for Amazing Treasures is hosted by Eric Close.
In northern Massachusetts, up by the New Hampshire border, is a small Episcopal church that was showing its age. All Saints in West Newbury was nearly 100 years old, and the small congregation was having trouble keeping up with the much-needed repairs. The front steps were cracking, the brickwork was falling apart. The new rector, Bill Murdoch, was rummaging in his office closet one day when he discovered an old painting that had been stored there.
It was only hanging in the church briefly for a short period of time, roughly around 87, 86. And the people's opinion of the painting when it hung up was that it was pretty ugly.
A parish history referred to the painting as a 19th century copy of Madonna and Child by the Italian Renaissance painter Andrea del Sarto.
Apparently a lot of the parishioners did not like the painting. They thought it was an ugly painting. So they decided they wanted the painting taken down.
The painting had also been hung in the church once before, decades earlier, but met with the same disfavor on the part of the congregation.
About 40 years ago, it appears that it was taken down from hanging in the church and was stuck in the attic of the rector's house. Actually, one of our parishioners who was going up there and helping clean the attic, she found it.
And I came across this painting that was on the floor. At first, it didn't seem to be a painting. It looked like a big board, and I stood the painting up and looked there at the other side. It was a beautiful painting. It was covered with dust, but I also noticed that there was a beautiful gold frame separated from it on the other side. That gold frame looked like it belonged to this painting.
When it was rediscovered in the mid-'80s, after 25 years in an attic, I think it looked kind of musty, but it was hung up behind the choir in the church again. And from what I understand, it wasn't long after that some people said, I really don't like that there. It really doesn't go with the rest of the church. And that's when it wound up in the rector's closet.
When Murdoch found it, he decided to have it appraised, and a local art dealer confirmed it was a copy that was probably done in the 19th century. Value? About $45,000, money they badly needed for the church repairs. But before selling it, Murdoch decided it would be prudent to have a second opinion, and sent pictures of the painting to the New York auction houses. At Sotheby's, they were reviewed by Christopher Apostle, director of Old Masters.
It had been recorded in the church archives as a gift given by a friend of the parish as a 19th century copy of an Andrea del Sarto, of which there are many in the United States. He was highly admired.
But Apostle knew that the Del Sarto Madonna and Child, which was in a Canadian museum, the one that was believed to be the original, was in fact a copy.
And I could tell that there was something very intriguing about the situation. It was in an old church. They weren't sure what they had. They had an idea that it could be something good, but they weren't sure. And I just knew that I had to get on a plane.
The first auction house that came to the parish and actually saw it walked through the door and literally took his breath away. Then he took out of his valise a book that had Del Sarto on the cover, and it was the life history of Del Sarto and his work, and flipped open the page and then showed me the painting of the Madonna and Child by Del Sarto that's hanging in the Metropolitan Museum in Ottawa. And I said, oh, so this is a copy of that painting? And he said, no, The painting in Ottawa we know is a copy. And what we don't know is we've never found the original until now.
Who was Andrea del Sarto? Not the most famous painter of his generation. He spent most of his life in Florence, the capital of Renaissance Italy, where his contemporaries were Michelangelo and Da Vinci.
And so there was no question in my mind that it was 16th century, and very possibly by Andrea himself. I am always very cautious in saying these things right out because I knew that I'd have to do the research and prove my case.
The painting was removed from the closet and taken to Sotheby's, where Christopher Apostle and his staff went about the job of authenticating it.
In this particular case, we found several scientific techniques very useful. We were able to use infrared reflectography to look through the paint surface itself and see the original carbon underdrawing of the artist. And there are several very interesting signs and sort of clues to how and who painted the painting.
The underdrawing is the preliminary sketch an artist usually makes before starting the painting. Since there are many good examples of other Del Sarto drawings available for comparison, the reflectography showed that the underdrawing below the painted surface of the Madonna and Child was clearly by Del Sarto. This painting, which had been tossed in the attic, collecting dust for decades, was in fact an original Del Sarto.
There is some record in our memorial book about the painting being touched up, if you will, by local house painters. We don't know what they did, okay, but and maybe we shouldn't say that, I don't know.
After the rediscovery of the Del Sarto here in February 1999, I realized that for 4 years I had been keeping the original Andrea Del Sarto's painting of the Madonna and Child in this closet and hanging my coat over it.
All Saints operates on an annual budget of $188,000 a year. The last Del Sarto to go to auction brought almost $400,000. The painting, which had been hidden away because nobody much liked it, could turn out to be a much-needed windfall for the small church.
The very best use and stewardship of this piece of art would be to sell it, not only for the monetary value, but also for the possibility of it making its way to a museum where it could be publicly displayed and enjoyed by a variety of people.
So Reverend Murdoch and 25 or so members of the congregation traveled to New York for the auction.
The auction itself was filled with excitement and anticipation. It was such a high moment for us that it felt almost surreal to me and to many other of the folks that were there.
When the actual auction was beginning for our painting, I was a nervous wreck.
Lot number 3, the Andrea Del Sarto. Start the bidding at $600,000. $600,000, now it's $625,000, $650,000 now. At $650,000, $75,000, $700,000, now it's $7. At $725,000, $750,000, $775,000. At $775,000 now. Any further bids? Any further? $800,000 we have. At $800,000 now, it's selling at $800,000. At $825,000 I have. $850,000. $875,000 now. $900,000. You at $925,000 in the second row. We have $950,000 at $975,000. At $1 million for it now. $1 million. Any further advance then? Fair warning then. $1 million. Sold $1 million.
The church's long-forgotten 16th century painting Madonna and Child by Andrea Del Sarto sold for $1.1 million, including buyer's commission. It took just 2 minutes for the bidding to fetch a new world record price for a Del Sarto.
The value of the painting is, in fact, 5 times the annual budget of the parish, as we now have it.
So the work has already begun on fixing up the church. The brick is being repointed, and there are plans for a completely new front entry. But that's the least of what they're doing with the money.
Let's create another email in addition to this and send it to India so that they know the progress that we've made and that they can anticipate this check for the purchase of that home for the lepers there. And now, after the sale of the painting, we have an entirely new opinion of the painting.
Talk about finding treasure in your own backyard. Well, this is a story about someone who's actually done it. Jamie Hill has lived here in the tiny village of Hiddenite, North Carolina for almost his entire life. And for most of that time, he's been digging up the ground. looking for one particular thing. Running beneath the town is what is thought to be one of the most complex geological zones in the world. 63 different kinds of gemstones have been found in the immediate area. But the one that has always interested Jamie Hill is the emerald. Jamie Hill spent years searching the countryside, driving backcountry trails, looking for the telltale signs that would lead him to the elusive emeralds. Hill has been hunting for treasure since the age of 10, when he found gold coins from the Revolutionary War. Convinced the geology of his hometown was prime territory for emeralds, he quit college to look for them, and has been single-mindedly searching for the last 15 years. He believed the town was sitting on top of the type of geology which is perfect territory for emeralds, an ancient pre-Cambrian fault. Jamie Hill couldn't see it, but he knew it was there. He had to borrow to keep going, and soon found himself over $100,000 in debt. Finally, he found a site and convinced his family to buy 100 acres of wooded land he was certain sat directly above the fault. His first explorations were on the surface, using just a simple screwdriver and shovel. Then, while doing one of many exploratory digs, he found a vein of mica and quartz, two minerals that when found together are a sign emeralds might be close by. The vein dipped into hard rock, where Hill uncovered a pocket, a 2-foot wide open space that was filled with mud, mica, and emeralds.
Oh my God. Good Lord, there's a hog. There's a hog.
Jamie Hill had finally found the treasure he was looking for, an entire cache of it. When he found the emerald pocket, he was weeks away from having his equipment repossessed. His water had been cut off, and he was about to lose his house. Today, Hill has been able to expand his exploratory hole in the ground to this, a full-scale emerald mine. So we came to Hiddenite to see if we could find emeralds with Jamie Hill. Now, is there an emerald in here?
Yes, this piece here.
This is it right here.
That's the emerald right there.
Wow.
That's approximately 10 carats.
And when did you find this? Recently?
Day before yesterday. Before yesterday.
All right.
So we're hot on the trail to another pocket. Hot on the trail.
Well, let's hope today's the day, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Several days before we arrived, Hill had found one of the telltale pockets that can signal the presence of emeralds. He ordered in a special endoscopic camera to examine the inside of the pocket to see if it contained any of the clues that would indicate this is a place to dig. Pockets like this one give Hill a chance to peek underground and see if a vein looks promising. This one certainly did, and that rock-encrusted emerald was the result. So we're back today to dig deeper and find some more pockets. How much does this sucker weigh?
93,000 pounds. The boom alone is 40,000.
Incredible. As heavy and unwieldy as the backhoe is, the operator must have a light touch. The trick is to get as close to a pocket as possible with the heavy equipment without actually disturbing the very fragile emeralds. One mistake here could cost millions in lost gems. So, it is with some trepidation I take over the controls. After a few minutes of instruction, it's my turn on the big cat. Slowly, by hammering and scraping the rock, we continue to open the vein until we find another telltale sign which can announce the presence of emeralds. Now, you were telling me something earlier about when you know you're getting close to emeralds, you start to see like some yellow. Mm-hmm. What is that? Can you show me that?
The yellow limonite, which is encasing the whole vein structure here
Right.
with the quartz and all of these micas,
Right.
is it's a pure limonite clay, and we kind of term this a yellow brick road. When you're following this material here with the quartz and the mica, that is a pure pocket clay that forms in the caverns where the emeralds grow, and it seeps up through the vein structure itself, through the quartz and the mica. And so essentially when your hands are turning this color yellow, you're on the right trail to find emerald.
Like you said, the yellow brick road to the Emerald
Leads
City.
to the real Emerald City.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is where you found, in this pocket, some emerald?
I've got an emerald I want to show you here. It's 858 carats.
Unbelievable. Wow, can I see it?
Yes.
Oh, it's huge. And how many carats is this?
858.
That's amazing. Emeralds are extremely rare, 19 times rarer than diamonds. This emerald, the Jolly Green Giant, was purchased for $500,000, and once a high-quality emerald has been cut, its value increases dramatically. These two emeralds were cut from rough stones found right here in Jamie Hill's mine. The Carolina Princess sold for $500,000. That's $64,000 per carat, the highest price ever paid for an emerald. The Carolina Queen, with an estimated value of at least $1.5 million, translates into over $100,000 per carat. Hill's favorite tool is a screwdriver, and while I think this is an odd choice for finding emeralds, I soon learn it is exactly what you need to nurse one out of its hiding place.
Periodically through there, what you do is you just put your screwdriver in and just see the soft clay like that.
Right.
And we're just going to pull it out. See the mica forming in it?
Right, okay.
It's real soft in there. That's a good sign.
Don't be too far.
Okay.
So I can go in here too, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
See, the seam's going up under here.
Yeah, it is. There's a pocket here. It just doesn't look like one because it's filled with mud and clay. But that doesn't mean there aren't emeralds nearby.
How's it doing back in there?
It's going right behind this rock.
Okay.
Yep.
Dale, we're probably going to have you hit this again.
Not quite there yet. We have to hit it again with the hammer. As the day wears on, I begin to understand the level of patience this work demands. A lot of starting and stopping. Explosives can't be used to break through the hard rock because it would fragment the very fragile emeralds. At this point, even using the pneumatic hammer is taking a chance.
Want to go check it out?
Yeah. Whew. Let's see what we got here. Where's the hand trowel?
Bust that wide open, didn't it?
Yeah, he did. He broke it pretty good. It's good. See how soft it got down here?
Yeah.
Look at that.
This is
Oh, look at all that big mica. See that?
Your heart skips a beat when you see this green mica.
I know.
The sun
I know.
catches it and you
It
think,
tends to fool
well,
you some, but
could that be it?
well, you have to check every piece.
Yeah. We slowly and methodically work our way through the pocket. I have no idea if we're close to finding anything. Then Jamie sees something.
Ooh. That's good looking material there, see that?
Yeah.
Look, ooh.
I see it now too. A spot of creamy green stone. Emerald green. Yes, sir. So that's it right
Yeah, that's the emerald right there. See, it's real dirty because it's coated in the clay. It's emerald.
The emerald is covered with mud and dirt. I would have totally missed it. But Jamie's experienced eye picked it right out.
Yeah, that's it.
5. Nice work.
That's it. We've got emerald. Took a lot of hard work. We've got a cluster. It looks like that's well over 100 carats of emerald in there. And we're going to have to be real careful.
Yeah,
just taking it out. And see, that's emerald too. It's all in there. That's emerald.
This whole section.
That's a whole section of emerald. See it growing?
Yep.
There's a stick that way. There's a whole stick that way. Good color too.
Okay, let's get it. The trick is to get the emerald out with as little fragmentation as possible.
You want to put your hand under?
Jamie works his way around it, loosening the rock and mica while trying not to disturb the emerald. You don't want to break that one.
It'll come out. It's already going to be a section, but the better part's out here. Okay. All right. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty. Yeah, we got it. We got emerald. That's it.
Good deal.
There you go. That's good color. Good green.
Pure, raw emerald. Today's find will cut into small stones ranging from 1/2 to 1 carat in size, with a value in the area of $10,000, contributing to a running total of well over $1 million in emeralds found here so far. So Jamie Hill has found his own field of dreams, and he literally has just touched the surface.
Relatively speaking, we're only from the surface of the ground, what, 12, 15 feet?
12, 15 feet, yeah.
12, 15 feet. Well, in other parts of the world, they have to go under whole mountain ranges, thousands of feet deep, you see, to get emerald.
Right.
We're only 15 feet deep and we're getting them.
You're just getting started.
Exactly. And today we pulled out approximately 100 carats of emerald, some of which is good and cuttable, some it's not.
Right.
But it's still emerald, and it's good color, and we're only 15 feet deep. So we're just beginning here.
All right.
And I got my life's work cut out right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah. You need another backhoe driver, let me know.
Okay.
All right. Have fun.
Thanks.
We've all heard of beginner's luck. Well, one fall day in Somerset, a district in southwestern England, a farmer's son gave new meaning to the term. Using a metal detector for the very first time, he struck pay dirt, literally. Shapbrook Farm extends over 400 acres of English countryside, and Kevin Elliott's family have rented it for the last 35 years. 2 years ago, they purchased the land, and that's when Kevin's cousin Martin saw his big opportunity.
I'd been asking Kevin and his father for, well, quite a few years if I could come detecting on his land, but as at the time he wasn't the owner of the land, he was only a tenant, they couldn't grant me permission. In January 1998, they finally bought the farm and granted me permission to detect on it.
But cousin Kevin didn't have the interest for the pastime that Martin did.
Well, Martin had been metal detecting for a number of years, and I knew he was a keen metal detectorist. But as far as metal detecting goes, I was not very keen on the subject. Basically, I thought all that metal detectorists found was rubbish, really.
Martin's been at it since he was 10 years old. He wasn't going to be put off by Kevin's enthusiasm.
He arrived at the farm and he said to me, "I've got a spare metal detector, would you like to come along?" Reluctantly I said, "Well, yes, okay," but the main reason was to show him what fields to go in, so I may as well be joining in the pursuit as standing around, as it were.
Okay, I'll set it up for you, just, keep it close to the ground, overlap your sweeps.
Martin handed me his spare metal detector, showed me how to use it, the controls, told me what signals to listen for if it's a good object. Right, let's have a go. While he was getting his own metal detector out of his case, I started to walk through the gateway and started to pursue my way across the field. While I was making my way slowly, within a matter of 2 minutes, I got a signal. Got the spade, dug up whatever it was, and found a small silver coin. Hey, look at this, Martin. Found a coin. I thought this is just a coin, no big deal, as it were. It's silver, wasn't it?
Kevin was right. Finding an ancient Roman coin in Britain isn't all that unusual. The Romans occupied Great Britain for over 500 years, and during that time they probably dropped a lot of coins everywhere. But cousin Martin was having a transcendental experience.
It's a denarius.
What's that then?
Roman silver. It's brilliant. I got very excited. I'd never found a silver Roman coin before, so to actually be with someone that found one was very exciting.
And he said, keep going, you might find something else. And we just pursued our way across the field, Martin in one direction, me in another.
And shortly after, I found my first silver Roman coin. So I thought to myself, 2 silver coins in the same field, there could be something very interesting here. So I then changed direction and made a beeline straight up towards the centre of the field and started picking up, several more silver coins. I could see Kevin coming in the other direction. He was doing the same.
When we started finding coin after coin, and some of them were in 2s and 3s, I started to change my opinion on metal detecting a little. I thought this is quite good fun, actually.
It was like a trail of breadcrumbs, if you like. I started off finding one coin, then another, a few paces afterwards. Shortly after that, I dug a hole. There was 2 or 3 in the same hole.
Martin had never found anything like this in all his years of metal detecting. He knew ancient coins were often buried for safekeeping, and this could be just the tip of an iceberg.
By that time, I was getting very excited. I had a good inclination there was something more interesting to be found out here.
Martin had no idea how right he was.
Kev, look!
What have we got? There's some in here.
Sometime in the distant past, someone had buried these coins, and they lay there undiscovered until Martin showed up with his metal detector.
They're everywhere in here.
At first, we were putting the coins in our pockets. After they started getting a bit heavy, I thought about taking one of my Wellington boots off and starting to fill that up. But cool, I think you better go and get a bucket.
Well, the following day after we'd found them, Martin came back and he brought with him the actual Treasure Act, which he'd read up on that evening.
The Treasure Act? This is Britain's law governing the finding of treasure. And it happens often enough so that they even have a brochure describing the proper procedure. And the first thing you do is notify the district archaeologist.
When we arrived at the farmhouse, there was this site of packages of coins, and following the visit to the discovery site itself, we returned back to the farmhouse, and I actually came away with 9,200 coins in the back of the car.
According to the Treasure Act, Stephen Minett then had to pass the treasure on to that most imposing of English institutions, the British Museum.
The new Act actually defines very precisely what constitutes treasure, and briefly, that is an object of gold or silver that's at least 300 years old.
The coins were Roman, over 300 years old. Actually, many of them were almost 2,000 years old, and they were also most definitely silver. So Kevin and Martin had authentic, certifiable treasure. Well, actually, it was the British Museum that now had it, but Kevin and Martin weren't worried.
An important part of the Treasure Act is that the finder receives a reward. This could be part of the find itself, or what is thought to be the fair market value of the find.
A group of experts meets, appraises the find, and comes up with a monetary value. Any museum in Britain can raise the amount and pay it to Kevin and Martin. If no one does, then the treasure reverts back to the cousins. But this whole process can take many months. Meanwhile, the experts work at determining the find's historical value.
The denarius was very much the coin of tax and of trade during this period of the Roman Empire. And probably the best analogy for it is to describe it as the American dollar of the period. It was accepted universally across the empire. But in many respects, its real value lies in the fact that it's led to the discovery of a very significant complex of Roman buildings, which we believe to be a previously unknown courtyard villa.
Which is why the coins were buried where they were, hidden under the floor for safekeeping. The occupants of this villa were most likely natives who had adopted Roman ways and had enough wealth to put away a fairly large sum of money.
There were no banks, therefore people had to put their wealth in terms of coinage somewhere safe, and very often this would have been to bury it.
You can see why the Romans picked this particular spot to build a villa. It's a very prominent spot, full view all the way around, just a fantastic place really. If I was going to have a house built, it'd be here.
So while Kevin and Martin wait for the appraisal, they find themselves back out in that field.
We've been back out here quite a few times since we found the main hoard, and well, we've searched it high and low, and you know, I don't think there's much left to be found here, to be honest with you.
Except for the day we were filming with them. While Martin was demonstrating how they had found the coins, guess what happened?
Is that one?
It's a silver denarius. Another one for the collection. It's in very good condition too.
Martin dutifully turned over the new coin, and it was added to the others. And then, at long last, 9 months after their discovery, the Treasure Valuation Committee finally announced the value of the find. The 9,000 silver denarii are worth $425,000. Kevin and Martin had literally hit pay dirt. Pay dirt more valuable than the farm itself. Treasure ships usually yield gold, silver, and jewels. But the Young Chirping, a small Swedish ketch sunk by a German sub during World War I, was carrying an entirely different treasure. One that we think might really surprise you. The First World War was raging across the European continent. Although Sweden was neutral, there was a heavy trade of goods being smuggled across the Baltic to Finland, eventually destined for Russia. There was so much smuggling going on, the Germans kept a small fleet stationed in the Baltic for the express purpose of stopping the illicit trade. In October 1917, a small Swedish ketch, the Jönköping, slipped out of its home port in northern Sweden, headed for Rauma in Finland. In addition to the steel products she was carrying, there was also a very secret and unusual cargo. The Jönköping was smuggling champagne and cognac for the officers of the Imperial Russian Army.
There were supposedly 70 barrels of cognac. There were 50 packing cases, each containing 100 bottles of champagne, and 30 casks of Bordeaux wine on the manifest. And they had been sent from France to Sweden, and then they were being smuggled across the Baltic to the Russian army.
A German U-boat intercepted the Jönköping, removed her crew, and sank her with explosive charges. The ship and her cargo went to the bottom. And then, almost 80 years later, Claes Bergvall, a Swedish treasure hunter, decided to go after her.
The amount of cognac was 68 barrels, loaded with 5,000 gallons of cognac in different quality, from the absolute best down to, the scrap cognac.
You might have got 25,000 bottles out of that ship. 25,000 bottles of cognac, which had been at the bottom of the sea for such a long time, would be a fantastic find.
Niklas Löfqvist is a Swedish journalist who covered the story.
When they tried to find out what they could do to get a ship up and what they could do with the champagne if it was drinkable or the cognac, they went to the Vasa Museum and talked to the experts.
The Vasa, a 16th century Swedish ship of war which sank in Stockholm harbor, was brought to the surface 300 years later, demonstrating that wood can survive centuries of immersion in the Baltic. So there was every possibility the casks containing the cognac would be found intact. Claes Bergvall knew this was a treasure worth going after. The cognac in those barrels could be worth millions, perhaps tens of millions. While there was no evidence it was still drinkable after 80 plus years on the bottom, the Jönköping's cargo was what dreams are made of.
The experts told them that champagne 80 years old could never drink that, forget it.
Yes, but it was the barrels of cognac that were the real treasure Bergvall was after.
There was a very big chance that they should have survived the storage at the bottom of the sea.
Bergvall and his partners knew that unlike most salvage operations, they would spend little time locating the ship. Bergvall had the U-boat captain's meticulously kept log, with coordinates showing where the Jönköping had been scuttled. The hard part was to be the recovery itself, because when they located the ship, she was not at the depth they expected. Instead of a very reachable 125 feet, the ship actually lay at a depth of almost 200 feet, and this changed everything.
So they had to go back to Sweden and find some people who could do this kind of diving, trimix diving. Then you need 3 different kinds of gases to be able to work at that depth.
They found a diving team that specialized in the use of trimix, a special blend of gases that enables divers working at great depths to return to the surface without suffering from the bends.
They had to rush from the diving elevator that took them up, get off all the clothes, rush into the compression chamber, right? And they had to spend 6 hours in the compression chamber.
Slow down.
The work was slow and dangerous. The water temperature was freezing and there was little, if any, visibility. Only 15 minutes at a time could actually be spent at the sea bottom for exploration.
Everything okay? Okay.
So divers worked around the clock in an attempt to speed things up. Despite their best efforts, the salvors soon found themselves at a point where they believed they might not be able to get the job done.
We knew that the cost was going to be much higher because of the extra 75 feet of depth when we found the Jönköping. But suddenly it started to raise by 50% every time we went out, or sometimes even with 100%.
It was time for a new game plan. If the ship was too deep for the divers to get to, then bring the ship closer to the divers.
1 meter below the surface. This area has to be free so we can go underneath, so we are losing time right now.
They would tunnel under the hull and slip cables.
And our first reaction was, wow, it's the same as our chair.
There's the white star mark.
But upon looking at it closer, we realized that there were some subtle differences. For example, the seat is a cane seat in their chair, and ours has wooden slats. And we noticed the way the footrest connected together, and instantly we had this sinking feeling in our stomach that what if all the chairs in the Titanic were made this way? Then it would kind of rule out our chair. So we regrouped, we went up to the library, and we found a picture of the chairs on the Titanic stacked up. We had a magnifying glass, and we were able to show very clearly that there were many different varieties of deck chairs visible in this photograph, and that was our first hurdle that we overcame.
We asked them about the captain, and they said, listen, that captain that you're talking about has never been in Halifax during the time of the Titanic sinking. Well, that was a sinking blow to our whole account. If the man wasn't even in Halifax, how could he have collected this chair from the Titanic?
We were going to find out if that was true or not, so we went to the Public Archives building to see if they had a city directory. And very quickly we were able to find that the captain was listed here from 1906 onwards. And then, I think Ralph was the one that pointed out to me, there's a sign over their chair that says, this is the only chair in the world from the Titanic. And we started talking amongst ourselves, like, maybe they don't want there to be a second chair. So we decided that we would try to find Captain Lamontalore's will, because we figured that person might be around who would have pieces to the puzzle. So we went to the Registry of Wills here in Halifax.
And in his will, he had left everything to a Margaret Bullcoats.
But as hard as they tried, they couldn't find any Margaret Buchholz.
We tried all directories and all kinds of fancy footwork to find her, and we couldn't find her.
Having reached a dead end, they were leaving town when they realized what they did have was Captain Lamontalore's last address.
Not far from here at Cemetery. We went to the street where the captain had lived, and we said if we could find an older person that might remember him, maybe we could get information.
So we began knocking on doors on the street. Everyone pretty much said they didn't know him, but we found one old woman who said, oh, the captain was a dear neighbor of mine, please come in. She had an employee named Margaret, who was a housekeeper, and when the captain's sister died, he was all alone. She sent Margaret over to take care of the captain.
And we said, was that woman named Margaret Bullcoats? And she said to us, well, Margaret Bullcoats was her maiden name, but she's married now, and her name's Margaret Pennington.
Ian and Ralph were so excited, they drove immediately to the small town outside Halifax, where Margaret Pennington was living.
And I took out a picture of the chair. She goes, I know that chair, I know that chair. That chair was from the Titanic.
The captain used to keep the chair in the garage. And I said to him, Captain, why don't you take the chair and put it in the garbage? It's no good to us. He's always said, oh, no, that's from the Titanic. I got to hold on to it. It's very sentimental, I retrieved it.
And Ralph and I just looked at each other and we were like, home run.
Now Ralph and Ian had independent verification of the letter. The trip to Halifax had paid off.
So we were going home completely joyous and happy, and when we got to Nantucket, we went straight to the Nantucket newspaper and we said, boy, have we got a story for you.
We're opening the paper thinking, this is it. They're going to say, we have found an amazing discovery. But instead, they said the alleged chair from the Titanic. And we asked them, why didn't you say it's the chair?
And their answer kept coming back saying, well, if they cannot establish the captain on a ship in the ocean in 1912, they really still can't prove that that chair was from the Titanic.
So we're like, okay, we're going to find it,
So we went to Halifax for a second time. This time we flew. And when we got to Halifax, we went to the archives and we were told that the newspapers kept a merchant marine log which recorded the movements of all the ships in and out of the harbor.
And we tried to find out if they knew anything about, his ship, the Contra Admiral Cabet, which was the ship in Lloyd's Register that he was the captain of.
We began looking for the correct dates. We started early in 1912 and went every day through the entire year. And to our extreme dismay, we found that the captain's ship, the Contra Amiral Corbet, was listed as being in Halifax Harbor every single day of 1912. So we were saying to ourselves, how could he possibly recover a chair if his ship never left the harbor? The records for the French cable company, which employed Captain Le Montelour, were returned to Paris at World War II.
Ian and Ralph steadfastly believed Captain Le Montelour had pulled the chair from the water. They needed to prove his ship was out there, and now their only hope was the ship's log, and that was in Paris, in the archive of the French cable company that owned the ship. But they hadn't come this far in order to turn back.
So we decided to go to Paris. At this point, we were starting to feel a little bit of pressure from our wives about the money and the time we were putting into this.
Our wives this time are going with us because they're not about to stay home anymore for trips that we're going to go on.
So I packed up my wife and my 6-month-old son and Ralph and his pregnant wife, and we flew to Paris on a Friday evening.
They planned on giving themselves 4 days to do the research. But when they arrived at the archive, they discovered not only was it closed on the weekend, but that Monday was a holiday. That gave them a single day, Tuesday, to find the evidence they needed. Returning to the archive on Tuesday morning, Ian and Ralph are hit with yet another roadblock.
Upon getting there, we were told that we could not go in because we did not have credentials.
But someone overheard and offered to help, a professional researcher, who then escorted them inside and even helped with the research. With their new French friend, Daniel Coton, they went right to work.
I didn't read French, but I could follow the dates. And I noticed that under the word navire, which is boat, it kept saying the name Mackie Bennett, Mackie Bennett, Mackie Bennett.
What we learned is because their ship is broken down, so the company had to rent a foreign ship. And that was a big clue to us.
So the Mackie Bennett was actually working for the French cable company. But where did that put Captain Le Montelour?
Well, we got very excited because we knew that Mackie Bennett was the best ship that we could have found out he was linked to. So we said, how can we find the cable repair documents that these things are referring to? They said, well, they're in another archive in Paris.
They only had a few hours left, and the new archive was on the other side of town.
So we go to this place. They say, what do you want? We tell them what we want, what record we're looking for.
And he said, well, it's 4 o'clock and we're going to be closing pretty soon.
Now time is of the essence because our plane's leaving.
We opened them up and we couldn't help but think, nobody has touched these books in 86 years. We start flipping through the pages and we happened upon the log, which is called Particulars of Repair, that is written in English by the British commander of the Mackie Bennett.
And right on the top line it says Captain Julien Le Montelour on board the Mackie Bennett. And that was it. That put our captain in the ship during the time of the Titanic sinking.
I think we jumped up in the middle of a no-talking archive and did a high five and maybe a shriek.
Now they had proven beyond any doubt the chair was genuine, documenting its journey each step of the way, from being plucked out of the North Atlantic by a French ship captain, all the way to an antique shop in Nantucket.
By the time we came back from Paris, between all of our traveling, long-distance telephone calls and everything, we were probably into the whole thing for about $20,000.
I mean, we're not wealthy people, Ian and I, so if it was something that was going to come out of it, that was good, I mean, that would be very good for us.
Everyone around us was saying, oh, you're going to make a fortune now, the chair's worth a fortune.
Well, maybe not a fortune, but it did turn out to be worth more than anyone thought. While Ralph and Ian look for a buyer, they are leasing the chair to the RMS Titanic exhibit in Orlando, Florida, where it's on display in its very own room. Appraised for $500,000, the chair has already returned more than their investment.
The idea of finding a chair and maybe it's valuable, well, nothing wrong with that. So my idea was, well, we lose, we lose. We win, we win. We just try it.
Beneath the tranquil surface of this freshwater spring in North Florida is as amazing a world as you're ever likely to see. On the surface, visitors swim and enjoy the glass-bottom boat tour. And below, In water so clear the visibility seems endless, divers are mapping and exploring what is believed to be one of the world's longest and deepest underwater cave systems. This is Wakulla Springs, and it is part of an enormous underground limestone formation which contributes billions of gallons to the supply of fresh water that Florida uses daily. Ponce de Leon is said to have discovered this spring, which some believe might even be his legendary Fountain of Youth. In more recent times, the natural beauty of Wakulla, its clear water, and the jungle-like setting has captured the attention of visitors since it was used in the early 1930s as a location for the first Tarzan movies. And along about the time Johnny Weissmuller was swinging on vines, the first primitive attempts were being made to discover the source of the spring's enormous volume of fresh water. And it was then that divers discovered a treasure trove no one was really looking for. Along the smooth bottom, lying on the sand, was a multitude of bones. Some were clearly the remains of prehistoric creatures long extinct. Scientists puzzled over what they were and how they got there.
Probably at the time that they were at Wakulla, the water table was down much lower. It was probably not a spring. It was probably a deep sinkhole, and animals, they would just congregate there, and I suspect some of them just sort of fell in accidentally.
Modern paleontologists, diving deeper into prehistoric times, point out that the mastodon skeletons found at Wakulla, now mounted in museums, and the mastodon bones and teeth still to be seen here, prove that this great spring has been welling forth for 25,000 years. New finds are still being made.
One group of bones turned out to be the virtually complete fossil of a mastodon, which is now on display in the Museum of Florida History. Extinct for over 10,000 years, the mastodon, one of North America's great land mammals, was a distant relative to today's elephant, weighing in at up to 10 tons. When these one sees here at Wakulla.
And you can see from the skeleton, which was recovered in the 1930s, this was a huge animal. Stood 16 feet high at the head.
A mastodon fossil like this one might bring $1 million in today's market. And as these divers push deeper into the enormous cave system, they are discovering that Wakulla has many more treasures buried in the sand.
One of the most interesting things is in the limestone matrix are frozen all kinds of relics of time. You've got complete skeletons of creatures that no longer exist. These are all well preserved, and then you find more recent type of bones that are actually in bone form that may be 10, 20,000 years old that are laying on the floor.
Although the spring clearly contains many more prehistoric fossils, the divers must leave them for the time being. Underwater paleontology is an expensive undertaking, and the mission here is to study the flow of water through the cave system.
And the recent 2 projects to map Wakulla Springs have resulted in the finding of additional bone beds These have not been observed by a paleontologist or an archaeologist, so it's unclear what might be down there. In late Pleistocene fauna in Florida are mammoth and mastodon and horse and saber cat.
So the scientists are happy to let the prehistoric fossil bones lay undisturbed, just asking the divers to map and photograph locations for future research and recovery. In the meantime, the treasure of Wakulla is considered safe. Having survived down here for many thousands of years, it's a good bet it'll be here a little while longer.